Man, hopefully I remember to cut this part out. Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to Ski Tutorials, and this is FPS 1.17. In today's episode, we're going to learn how to make the actual sound effect for the gun. And why don't I give you a preview of the sound effect right now? Cool. So this is the sound effect that we're going to be using, and it is by somebody with the username of RobinHood76 from freesounds.org. Just to give credit where credit's due, that's where I got the sound effect. And we're also going to be trimming down the sound effect inside of a program called Audacity. I'll show you how to do that. It's actually a free program, and it's very quick and easy to do. It's not 100% necessary, but it's going to make our game run a little bit faster. But anyways, inside of Unity, we have audio sources and audio listeners. So the audio listeners, basically, they listen for the sounds that are around in the game. And we can either put this audio listener on the main character or the player character, or we can put it on the camera, or we can put it anywhere we want, really. But basically, this is just a way of just telling Unity where the ears of the game are going to be and where we're listening for the sounds, so that everything sounds right in 3D, so that the sounds coming into your headphones or your surround sound speakers actually sound correct. And then an audio source is a component that you can attach to any game object, and there's a couple of different options like play on awake, loop, and things like that. And these are just audio sources that play sound effects, and you can attach them to any game object. In this case, we're going to be creating an empty game object every time that we create a bullet. And this empty game object is going to have an audio source component attached to it that's going to play on awake. And then we are also going to attach the destroy after time script to the game object, so that it destroys itself after about 2 seconds or so. So that we don't have just extra game objects laying around once this sound effect is done playing, because right now with the audio source, there's no options to automatically destroy the game object once the sound effect has been played. So yeah, every time we create a bullet, we're going to create this game object in the exact same place, and the game object's only going to be the audio source. Now, we can't put the audio source on the bullet itself, because the bullet itself destroys itself literally right after it creates itself, within the same frame. So that there's just simply not enough time to actually play the sound. You might hear like a little like or like little like, you know, first like 1/60th of a second of the audio file if you attach it to the bullets, but you really need that like full 2 seconds for the whole bullet sound to actually play all the way through. So that's why we're creating our a game object for the sound effect. And now there's one other problem when we create the sound effect right next to the bullet, is that when we create the sound effect and it's just sitting there, that's all it's going to do. It's just going to sit there. And that's fine if we're just shooting our gun and we're not moving. But if we're running, and as we're shooting, like we shoot and then it creates an audio source and it stays there and we keep running, that sound is going to go past your ears, and it's going to sound really weird with these sounds going past your ear and getting really loud as you're running at them. So we'd rather make these sound effects actually follow us and stick with our gun as we're running around, just to, I mean, so it'll still sound perfectly right to other players, or if you want to move the camera around, it's still going to sound right. But it won't go through your ears, and it won't sound weird and distorted. So the way that we're going to do that is, as soon as the bullet is created, we're going to use the gun script to take that sound effect, or the game object that we have the sound effect attached to set that game object's parent to be the gun. So the sound effect is actually going to stick with the gun, because when a game object is a child of a parent or a child of another game object, it's going to stay in the exact same position relative to that game object. So when the sound effect is floating right in front of our gun, that's what's going to make our game sound right. So let me pull up the text file and show you how we're going to do that inside of the code. So the only variable that we're going to be using inside of the gun script is bullet sound. So this is just a variable that we're going to use to save which prefab we want to use, or which prefab is going to be our sound effect. And we're going to save the sound effect as a prefab inside of its own game object with the audio source attached to it. So yeah, that's the only variable that we need. So let's take a look at the code that we're going to be using. can never manage to fit this all. Okay, now I gotta stand way over because I know in one of my other videos I was standing in front of the code for half the video. Sorry about that. But yeah, here we go. This is the if statement that we have that is every time we press left click, it creates a bullet. So here we have if left button down, create bullet, wait till next fire is ready. We're going to fire a bullet. And then here's where in the other episode we made the gun actually randomize the angle a little bit every time you shoot. Here's the recoil. Here's resetting the timer to wait for the next bullet. And here's it actually counting down until when it can shoot a bullet next. So let's take a look at the things that we've actually changed. First of all, we have declared a new variable inside of here, and it is var hold sound and game object. So this is going to be different than bullet sound. Bullet sound is going to be saving the prefab that we want to create every time, whereas hold sound is going to be a variable and it's going to save that very particular sound game object that we just created, and it's going to save that and remember that for reference for later so that we can set its parent to be the gun itself. So let's go down here. All right, so right after we instantiate the bullets, we're going to do the exact same thing but with a sound effect. So we have if bullet sound, so we're just making sure that we have something set to this variable up here. So if bullet sound, hold sound equals instantiate bullet sound, bullet spawn position, bullet spawn rotation. So we're instantiating a copy of the prefab bullet sound in the position of the bullet spawn and rotation of the bullet spawn. Now you can see we have hold sound equals. So with instantiate, when we use it this way, not only is it going to create a copy of the game object that you give it, but it is also going to return you the actual variable of the game object itself. So we're just having hold sound, or we're setting hold sound to save the game object that we just created. And now we're going to access it down here. So now we have if hold sound. So if we actually have a game object saved inside of the variable hold sound, so we're remembering the sound that we just created, and we're going to have hold sound.transform.parent equal transform. So we're accessing the game object hold sound. So this is the sound effect that we just created and we just remembered by doing this up here, this little bit of code. So then we're accessing the transform, and then we're accessing the parent. So the parent is a variable that we have saved inside of the transform class, and the parent is, whenever you see me inside of the inspector and you drag and drop one game object on top of another and it creates that little like arrow and it looks like a folder, that's a parent. So the very top object becomes the parent and the child is the ones inside of that folder. So when a game object is a child of another game object, that child is always going to move with its parent in rotation and position and scale according to its parent. So it's just going to stick with that in position, rotation, and scale. And then we're just going to have it equal transform, or the transform of the game object that this script is attached to, which is going to be the gun itself. And we know that the bullet sound is going to be created at the bullet spawn. So if we set its parent to be the gun right when we know that it's at the bullet spawn, we know it's going to stay in the exact position of the bullet spawn. So every time we create a new bullet or a new bullet sound, it's going to run through this code and it's going to set that bullet or the bullet sound's parent to be the gun so that the bullet sticks with us, so that it moves with us. So yeah, that sounded pretty confusing, but hopefully it'll make a whole lot more sense once I actually go into Unity and show you how to do that, which I am going to do right now. So I'm going to cut this green screen and go straight into Unity and show you how to do that inside of Unity. Alright, cool. Alright, here we are inside of Unity, and actually before we go into Unity, there's one thing I want to do first, and that is to affect this gunshot sound effect here. Turn down my volume just a bit. Right now it's 2 seconds, which doesn't sound like a long time, but because we're going to be firing this sound effect over and over and over again, and they're going to be layered on top of each other, to avoid one of them just cutting out, it'd be better to just cut it to a shorter audio file. So what we're going to do is we're going to drag and drop it inside of this program right here called Audacity, which is a free program. By the way, if you skip this step, it's really not that big of a deal. It's just going to run a lot smoother if we shorten up this audio file. So as you can see right here, here's the gunshot, and then it gets really quiet and doesn't really do much. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to pick a place around, I don't know, I think here looks good. I'm going to delete it. So I'm just going to drag and highlight, and I'm just going to press delete. And then also there's a lot of time before the gunshot even starts. Not a lot of time, but 0.15 seconds. So I'm going to cut that down so the bullet sound effect happens right when we shoot it. So let's see what that sounds like. So it kind of gets this like cut out at the end. So what we're going to do is we're going to highlight the end of that, and then we're going to go into Effect and click Fade Out. So that's just going to fade the audio into nothingness. So now when we play it, it's not as noticeable. It fades out into nothingness. So yeah, now our audio file is ready to go. It's the length we want. It's nice and short. So now let's go to Export as Wave. And whatever, I don't really care about renaming it. So I'm just going to save it on the desktop. Actually, I guess I will have to rename it because I have something else with that name. So, whatever. What the hell? What's happening? Okay. Why is it looping? Oh my god. Oh my god. Okay. Well, let's just see if that worked out. That sounds like the audio effect that we just made. So anyways, well, that was weird. As you can tell, Audacity is not my first program. So I'm just going to exit out of that, and let's reopen up Unity and Monocode, and let's go inside of Unity. So now we need to import the sound effect. So from the desktop, I believe this is the one I just made. So I'm going to import that. Now there's nothing, whoops, I think I might have bumped the microphone there, but now there's nothing we actually have to do with the sound effect after we import it in the inspector. It's all ready to go. But what we do need is to create a game object that is going to be the sound effect. So here I'm just going to create empty, and I'm going to call this gun sound. And I'm just going to, let's see if it works if I just drag and drop it. Yep. So if I drag and drop the sound effect itself just on top of, or just into the game, or into the inspector of the game object that we have saved as gun sound, it's going to automatically create a audio source, and it's going to have this sound effect here. And you can see when I click on it, it highlights it inside of the project window. And there's nothing we really need to affect in here. There's a couple of different things like volume. Of course, we can affect that later on. Pitch, we can change that, I guess, if you wanted to. Priority, I can't remember if the lower number is makes it a higher priority, or if it's a higher number that makes it a higher priority. But for now, we don't need to worry about this. This is mainly just so that it's just so if there's a lot of sounds going and the engine says, hey, I need to cut out some sounds, which sounds should I cut out first? We can have it cut out sounds like, I don't know, blood dripping and hitting the ground, or a bullet shell hitting the ground, or a footstep, whereas we do want the sound effects of explosions and bullets and punching and, you know, just things that would be weird if it didn't play. But for now, we can go ahead and just leave that slider right in the middle, and it should behave fine, because, I mean, we don't really have any different sound effects in here so far. So we can worry about that later. And then we have play on awake checked and loop unchecked. So pretty much this is almost ready to go. The only thing we need to add onto is a copy of the destroy after time script, and anything that is longer than the sound effect itself. So as we know, it's 0.9 seconds long. So just for safety, I'm going to have it destroy itself after 2 seconds. Now let's create a prefab. So create a prefab. and we'll call this bullet sound. And let's drag and drop that gun sound, bullet sound, whatever, same thing. And now we can go ahead and just delete that out of our scene now that we have it saved as a prefab. So now we need to go into our gun script and affect this. So the variable that we need is var bullet sound. Actually, I don't know if that's what I called it. I'm going to double check that. I called it bullet sound. Yes, cool. Monoscript. Okay. Bullet sound. Game object. And let's save that. And why don't we go inside of Unity and let's go to our gun. And now you can see we have bullet sound. And don't drag and drop the sound effect onto here. That's actually not going to work because it needs to be a game object. And here's our prefab, which is our game object. So that's what we want to drag and drop, the bullet sound or the prefab that is a game object. It has a transform, an audio source with the sound effect in the audio source, and then the destroy after time script. That's what we need inside of that. So yeah, let's go back into MonoDevelop and let's do the rest of our code. So we need a line of code here, which is creating a variable called hold sound game object. And now after we create the bullets, we're going to do if bullet sound, just like we do if we have a bullet defined. We have we have a bullet sound defined, we're going to instantiate the bullet. So instantiate and bullet, oops, sound, please get it out of my way. All right, whatever. And I'm going to be lazy and I'm just going to copy and paste that. The position and rotation of the bullet spawn. So we're going to create a copy of the prefab bullet sound in the position of the bullet spawn's position and the rotation of the bullet spawn. Cool. So this is actually going to create the bullet sound, but we need to save we need to save a copy. We need to save a reference to this game object that we just created inside of the variable hold sound. So we need to write hold, sound equals instantiate bullet sound, position, rotation. So remember I said instantiate, not only is it going to create a copy of that prefab, but it is also going to return you the game object that it just created. So we're going to save that game object inside of hold sound so that we can reference it down here. So we're going to do if hold sound. So now that we actually, because before we actually put or have hold sound equals instantiate, hold sound is just going to be a blank game object. So if we don't fire a bullet and do this whole thing, hold sound is just going to be blank. So we need to do if hold sound, we're going to affect hold sound. So hold sound, which is a game object, and now we need to access its transform. And now we're going to access its parent. And we're going to set its parent to be transform. Or in other words, we're going to set the parent of the bullet sound that we just created and have it be the transform of this gun. So we have all that set. I think it's all set. Why don't we give it a shot? Nice pun, right? Give it a shot. Looks like it's working. Let me turn down my volume a little bit. But I'd have to say that looks pretty cool. It looks like we're actually shooting a gun now. So yeah, that is how to create the sound effect for the gun. And now let me actually play that one more time. I just want to zoom in so that you can see how the sound effect is actually represented by this little symbol inside of the inspector. and that bullet sound is actually sticking with the gun, and it's staying where we create the, or where it's created, or it stays with the gun. So that way, when we're running back and forth, well, how come I can't see my, oh, I'm pressing S, that's why. There he goes. It's hard to control both views at once. So now the bullet's actually sticking with it. So why don't I actually undo some of the stuff I just did and show you what happens when we don't do this line of code here, or when we don't set the parent to be, when we don't set the parent to be the gun. So I'm just going to comment out these 2 lines of code. So it's just going to not make it the parent. So watch now when I, let me move my mouse. There we go. So now when I shoot it, the bullets stay, or the bullet sound effects stay where they are. So now, I don't know if you'll be able to hear this through the microphone, but if I shoot while running forward, I get a lot of weird distortion, and it's not a really big deal, but it doesn't sound very good, and it's this weird distortion, and it's very distracting from the gameplay. So I put these 2 lines of code, or I put all these lines of code in place to get rid of that distortion and to have the game sound better. So now the bullet sounds actually stick with the gun. So yeah, that is how to add sound effects to your bullet. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Until the next episode, I'll see you guys later. Keep making games.